Welcome to our channel, where we share real-life stories full of drama, suspense, and horror. Every story on this channel has been lived by real people and will take you to mysterious and thrilling worlds. Join us to explore the dark side of life and experience events that will leave you amazed and on edge. Welcome to the Most Wonderful Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel to receive all My name is Assad, from one of the southern governorates of Yemen. When I finished my studies, I was appointed as a teacher in a school in one of the remote villages. It was far from our village, so I used the Aria bicycle to move between our home and the school. I used to travel the road in an hour and a half or 2 hours at most. I was happy with my new teaching job, except for the distances. The long distance I traveled by bike every day was eating away at my joy. A colleague suggested to me that I buy a room close to the school, and so I could join my work every day without delay or trouble. I talked to my parents, and they were happy with the idea. My mother said, "We are sorry to part with you, son, but your comfort is the most important thing to us." So explained to Baraka, God, and so I started looking for a room to rent that would be close to the school. I did not know that this matter was difficult. So many residents. The village does not rent out their homes to strangers. I recommended to some of my work colleagues to search with me in the villages in the area. I might find what I am really looking for. 2 days later, my colleague Abdel Samad came to me and told me that he had found a house for me to rent, and we should go and see it after finishing work in the afternoon. I was very happy with this news. Finally, my suffering with transportation would end. By motorcycle on these rugged roads for long distances. Praise be to God and thanks be to Him Almighty. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my colleague Abdul al-Samad, so I walked with him to the house that we will see. We entered what looked like a narrow road. Then we came out in a spacious place surrounded by a fence with a simple village house in the middle. He said to me, "Look, your house is there." I told him, "But it seems that the rental price for it will be high." He said, "No, you will see that it is within your reach." The house looked to me as if it had been abandoned for a time, and it is located in a somewhat isolated place from the village in which I will be working. The place seems very quiet, almost lonely, but when I heard the rental price, I decided not to miss this opportunity. It was a small price. Indeed, only a quarter of an hour away, I walked to school. I said to my friend Abdel Samad, "How are we going to enter the house? Do you have a key?" He replied, "I don't have the key to the house, but it is not locked. We can enter it." I was surprised that the owner of the house left it unlocked. We entered the house, and everything in it was very old and needed a mattress and a lot of cleaning. The important thing is that I decided to hate it, despite its shortcomings. It is enough that it has a door and a roof to shelter me. The next day, I agreed with the owner of the house and brought some bedding and the necessary utensils after that. I cleaned the house and wiped the dust. It was a very tiring day, and it was the first night I spent in this house, which looks like it was built centuries ago. I put my head on the pillow and closed my eyes to wait for sleep, but I woke up in fear after I started hearing voices and movements outside the house. The house did not have a window so I could look out and see what was happening outside, so I remained in my place, reciting what I had memorized from the Quran until I fell into a deep sleep. The next day, I asked one of the village residents about what I heard him last night outside my house, and he said to me, "Don't be afraid of anything. These might be wolves or foxes roaming the area at night looking for food to eat. They move in groups." So I said to the man, "This is what I thought too, but perhaps because it was the first night in this area." I felt some fear. I thanked the man and then left. To school, I used to believe and still believe in the jinn as a creation of God, and I had doubts that the house, most of which was inhabited by the jinn, became clear to me that the voices, what I was hearing at night, were actually the sounds of animals. A few days later, I decided to visit my parents. I rode a motorcycle and headed to our village, where I spent the weekend there. Then I decided to leave shortly after sunset because the weather was very hot during the day, and after I covered half the distance on the way back, something broke in my car. My bike stopped, but what bothered me was the place where the bike broke down. It was a valley with traces dating back to an ancient era, and this valley was known for its malmth. It is haunted by jinn. How many people who passed by talked about it, of the wonders and strange things that happened to them. Here I started reciting the evening remembrances while trying to fix the fault of the bike, but I was not able to do that, and I will not be able to push the bike. There were difficult hills on the way. I sat there waiting for someone to pass by and provide me with help. The place was like a group. From the close-together hills, many trees, and a spacious place containing archaeological remains from a bygone era, nearly half an hour passed, and nothing passed. A car from here, I started to feel uncomfortable and bored. Then I heard a voice coming from between the trees, a voice saying, "It seems that you are in trouble and need help." I turned toward the voice and did not find anyone. What surprised you and me was that the voice was seen and well known in our area. No woman could go out at that late time. In addition to offering help to someone you do not know, she remained in my place for a few moments. Then the woman repeated her words and said, "I will seek help from you then." My body shivered, and I was overcome with great fear. I realized that a pound was speaking to me. I felt a terrible coldness in my extremities. Then I sat on the ground and fainted from the horror of the situation. I did not wake up until the next day with the first signs of dawn. I tried to start the bike, and it started. Then I rode it towards school. I spent the entire day thinking about what had happened to me in last night, and that night, and after that, I felt like someone was watching me, walking behind me wherever I went. He lives with me in the same house. I thought that all of these were just whispers. I began to read the Quran morning and evening, and at all times. One night when I went to sleep, I saw in a dream a young woman in the prime of life standing on a large rock. She had covered her face with a brocade cloth, and only her eyes were visible. She said to me, "Do you think that if reading the Quran will distance me from you? On the contrary, my attachment to you and love for you will lead to me." So I got up from my bed, and I seek refuge in God from Satan. I became concerned about the diet, and I was distracted all the time. After a few days, I decided to change the atmosphere and go by motorcycle to the top of one of the mountains surrounding the area. I carried some things in my bag, then I was about to ride the bike, but I gave up on that and decided to go on foot. I was trying to regain myself and regain my passion for life, and for a long time. Thinking made me feel unbearable. I walked through the meadows, past the hills, up and down, then climbed the mountain until I reached the top. There was a point where the top of the mountain was spacious and flat. I prepared a pot of coffee and sat watching the sun go down until it set, and behind it remained the red twilight, as if it were the last of the day's guards who knew that he would fall in a losing battle in the face of the power of the night. Then I remembered the poem of Muro al-Qais and began to recite his poetry, so I said, "O long evangelical night." Immediately after that, I heard a voice behind me continue the verse and say, "It's morning." And "What's the morning?" I was terrified by this voice and turned around quickly to find a woman standing not far from me, looking at me with a smile. Then she said to me, "I also love poetry. Do you see that we have many things in common?" I asked her in a trembling voice, "Who are you? What are you doing here? And what do you want from me?" She said, "My name is Jumana, a Muslim jinn, and I suddenly want you." I heard the voice of a man who sounded very angry. He told me to leave and get away from here, and I replied to him with that pound, "And it's nothing to do with you." "Leave him alone then." Their voices rose, and it seemed as if they were fighting. I did not understand what was going on. I decided to leave, and my steps quickened between the mountain's sprawling trees, which made the night even darker and darker. My heartbeat increased, and all I thought about was that I would reach my home as soon as possible. So I started jogging until I entered the house and closed my door. Then I breathed a sigh of relief and threw my exhausted body on my back. The bed and I was thinking about Jumana. Really, she is a jinn. A few days later, I decided to visit my parents in the village. In the days of Tala, water was scarce. At that time, my father asked me to go and fetch water from a well in the valley surrounding the village. I rode a grayed donkey and placed a large water bladder on it. Then I walked among the farms, and I could only see the light of the moon. I reached the well and filled it with water. On the way back, I felt movement behind me. I turned around. So, if she is the same jinn who calls herself a human beauty, her beauty is that she is a jinn, so I was not afraid as much as I admired her. I wondered to myself, is it? Is it really her true appearance, or is the reality other than what I see? She broke my silence and thought. She said to me, "What do you think about us getting married tonight?" I said to her, "But does your family approve of this marriage?" She said, "I left my family years ago. My family are Hindu jinn and live in India. As for me, I converted to Islam and left the Hindu religion. Then I immigrated to Yemen, where I learned about my religion. Then I lived alone near the ancient ruins that you passed on your bike. There I saw you for the first time, and there I felt. You are a good human being with a generous soul, so I followed, as if it were not." I asked her, "But how did you convert to Islam and leave the religion of your fathers in India?" She said, "One of the sorcerers had power over a young man, and she lived in her body for days of torment. She read the Quran a lot all the time, and I was extremely distressed by that, and I wished that she would stop for one moment." About the reading. After that, a person, a jurist and memorizer of the Quran, came and began reading and repeating certain verses, to the point that I almost died from burning from the force of those verses. After that sheikh spoke to me about Islam and invited me to enter into it and abandon its idolatrous worshippers. I accepted that and recited the 2 shahadas at his hands. Then I left that girl, but I escaped on the same day and traveled from India towards Yemen across the sea. If my people and my family had caught me, they would have imprisoned me and tortured me because I left their religion. So I asked her, who was that man? The one who rebuked me and asked me to leave that night. She said, "That is a Jewish jinn who always follows me and wants to marry me after I wake up. He is Jewish, but I always push him away and do not want to marry him. And if he goes beyond his limits, I threaten him with the Quran and he leaves." My marriage was completed with that pound, and I spent beautiful and wonderful months with her without anyone knowing about this matter. One night, I prayed the evening prayer in the village mosque and returned home, walking among the farms in the darkness of the night and the stillness, which is nothing but the barking of dogs coming from distant villages. When I entered the house, I found Jumana crying bitterly. I asked her what was wrong. Why were these tears? She said, "The time has come." At the time of separation, I said, "Parting. Why, did anything happen to me?" She said, "No, I was always a good companion, but my parents came here." I said with amazement, "Your parents?" She replied to me, "I don't know who told him where I am, but they came to me to tell me that they had also converted to Islam and left the Hindu religion. God opened his heart to what Islam is, and they knew the path of truth. They came asking me to return to India and live with them in safety. I told him that I was married to Ansi, and he became very angry. Then they gave me 2 options. No. Third, either I will be sent back to India with them, or they will be killed because I violated the laws of the jinn, and I do not want to separate from you. I wanted to live with you, even though I am a jinn, and you are an Ansi." Then I burst into tears, surprised by these words, and I said to her, "Perhaps this separation is better for me and for you will be reunited with your family again, and it will be complete. I made you happy with their conversion to Islam. But as for me, I do not wish for your destruction, and I would rather they take you with them than kill you or harm you with harm." You looked at me, with eyes full of tears. Then she got up from her place and opened the door. Then she went out, and I followed her. She was talking to 2 people whose features I could not recognize in the darkness. They seemed to be her parents. The 3 of them stood up and said something. Then they walked towards the valley with heavy steps. Jumana turned towards me and looked at me with a farewell look. Then their steps quickly accelerated until they disappeared down the hill. I ran towards them and looked at the valley. There was no trace of them. I returned home and closed the door. I felt a terrible silence and a depressing emptiness. How can I be patient with your separation, Jumana? I shed copious tears and then surrendered to sleep. Days passed, and I no longer saw Jumana. Every day, I looked at her in my wakefulness and dreams, as if I was waiting for her to return. The following year, I was transferred to a school in our village, so I moved to live with my parents, and then I soon married his daughter. My uncle was a blessing as a wife, and as the years passed, I began to forget about Jumana, and it became just a memory for me. Beautiful and a fleeting specter from the past. The end of the story. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel to receive all new updates, and do not forget to press the like button and motivating comments. May you always be good.